Okay. So I've titled my presentation "The Corruption of Sacred Tobacco," and we've already started touching on that. And here's a real dramatic. This is my most recent piece that I. I call this GASP. So it's sort of an evolution of the series of cancer sticks, this cancer stick series. You know, the thing to do is to do a native land acknowledgement, and I know that it seems like it's very little, but at least it's something. So I grew up in Shoreline, which is why I wanted to be part of this meeting. I really wanted to be there in person. And Shoreline is on the traditional lands of the Coast Salish people. So a moment of respect to elders past and present. And of course, Watto, thank you to Joseph Warren, our council chairman of the Cherokee community of Puget Sound, for inviting me and coordinating, facilitating this gathering. Who I am, who I'm not. I'm the daughter of Ed and Sheila Sixkiller Fritz. So my mother is the Sixkiller. I have here that I was born for the Wolf Clan, but I've learned since that I'm technically clanless right now. I would need to become part of a clan, since there are multiple females in my family that were not Cherokee in my direct descendants. So I actually don't have a clan. I'm a contemporary Cherokee artist. I've had work at the Cherokee Art Market, Cherokee Homecoming Art Show, Santa Fe Indian Market. I'm in the Herd Market in a couple weeks. And I'm a conceptual artist. So for me, the idea or the concept that's presented by the art is more important than its appearance necessarily. I do sculptural and functional ceramics, beadwork, metalwork, and I'm an urban Indian. But I am not a Cherokee or a Native American scholar expert. I'm just someone who geeks out on information gathering. So some background into the Cherokee tradition of tobacco. Tobacco was considered medicine that sustained life and stopped suffering. It was considered essential and extremely strong medicine. And so I think of this sort of as similar, the corruption of tobacco reminds me of what's happened with the opioid crisis. Here's this medicine that is really strong and really effective in stopping suffering, like opium and opioids, but it has gotten commoditized, commercialized, overused, extremely addictive, and completely corrupted, so that it's become something that's really detrimental to our lives. And in Cherokee tradition, as far as I can find, tobacco was smoked in a pipe, but it was not inhaled, and it was sometimes blown onto a patient. So that's how it was usually used medicinally. In this slide, there's these geese. So the oldest written stories all come from James Mooney in the early 1900s, and he's written down a version of a story of tobacco where there was just one original plant, and it was at a time when the people and the animals were still one people. The animals could talk and could be understood. And there was just this one sacred tobacco plant that was essential for people's health. And the geese stole this plant and took it, some say east, some say south, took it with them. Okay, all these animals tried to get it. So here's some wild tobacco, as it might have looked to the traditional Cherokee people. Does anyone know this story? How did we get tobacco back?
Creator.
What's that?
The creator.
No.
The creator, that's what I.
Here's my hint.
Oh.
A hummingbird.
A wonderful tiny little hummingbird brought a branch of the tobacco that had a few leaves and some flowers and some seeds back from the geese. And you might notice a parallel in this story to many of the other most ancient Cherokee stories. So like the spider is the one, all these other stronger, larger, more powerful animals tried to retrieve fire so that it could be used. And this tiny, tiny spider is the one that was able to do it. All these animals tried to bring mud up from the bottom of the ocean to build the earth. None of them could do it. This humble little mud beetle or water beetle is the one that was able to do that and created all the land. And in this case, later in our perceived history, this tiny, tiny hummingbird, all these other animals try, and in this version of the story are killed by these geese. And this hummingbird is able to go in with its speed and stealth and take back an entire branch. And because this branch had seeds on it, when the hummingbird brought it back to the people, they were then able to plant the seeds and propagate. And now there wasn't just one plant. Now we're able to propagate. So far, so good. By the way, I thought this would be a good time to ask if anyone picked up tobacco seeds from the Gadoogie portal, the seed bank.
I haven't them, but asked.
What's that?
Mary said but she hasn't gotten it yet.
Oh, congratulations. When I went online, they only had like 6 different types of seeds left. Yeah, so tobacco seeds are some of the seeds that are available through the Cherokee Nation Seed Bank every year, but there's only so many. So I think they were completely out of all the different types of seeds within a few hours. Does anyone else know?
Great. Thanks, 6 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were out before we got the email.
Yes.
They were open.
Yes. Like the only reason I got any seeds was because Joseph, thank you again, had sent that email ahead of time. And I actually put I put an alarm on my, on my calendar, but by the time I logged in, almost all the seeds were already gone. Anyway, I thought that was kind of cool. So just to kind of put things in perspective, if we think of the primary source or the original source of this story, this is a visual I put together talking about the grandma spider story, but it's still kind of relevant in that, most of the artifacts that we have from Cherokee people date back to 1,000 years AD, right? So it's like 540 years before the first European contact in 1540. Another 290 years after contact is the Indian removal or the Trail of Tears. And so in 1902, a full 362 years of cultural erosion later, finally this story gets written down. However, it doesn't say that. Well, let's see. It acknowledges that that we're not smoking and inhaling or chewing tobacco, right? That the tobacco is being used ceremonially and medicinally. So I think it's interesting that even with all this time, right, all kinds of languages being lost, many of the stories, even in Mooney's transcription, are obviously heavily influenced by Christianity and other, newer European cultural norms. But this information is maintained. You could even go to the current day, right? Present day, 193 years from the removal. We're still working really hard to reacquire our language. But the information that tobacco was used traditionally medicinally, and that it was smoked in a pipe, hasn't been lost. We still have that information. Here's a photo of a Cherokee pipe. It was the oldest artifact I could find a photo of online, dated, well, anywhere between the 17th and 18th century, right? But it is pre-removal. So this really long stem, right? This really long stem and carved from stone. There's a long tradition of clay pipes in Cherokee tradition as well. And even if you go online today and you say, okay, how do you smoke a pipe, right? You pack the bowl, you test the draw, you light up, and you puff, but don't necessarily inhale. So even this dude isn't necessarily inhaling this smoke. But what is the mainstream message? Okay. Thanks to Joseph, I added in this cigar store Indian, right? So cigar store Indians were seen as early as the 17th century. It was when most people were still illiterate, and so the packaging wasn't and advertising wasn't as effective. So these cigar store Indian figures were used to advertise their wares. The fact that there was tobacco. Uh-oh, my computer says I'm having network issues. Am I still okay?
Fine.
Oh, okay, great. I feel like I'm missing a slide that I added. What's the mainstream message? We'll see. By the early 1900s, advertising and packaging was more prevalent, and we see the Red Man Chewing Tobacco brand. And you can see that this company is still in full force today, chewing tobacco. And then by 1939, cigarettes are being marketed with Native American imagery on the cigarettes. And this is what I have to say about that. This whole American Spirit, so American Spirit cigarettes are still available. Go ahead.
I love it. I love that.
And I say, yeah, this is un-American Spirit. My original piece said, like annihilation, something, I don't remember now, on the bearings. I think I am missing. Oh, there it is. Okay. So I actually found an article in the BMJ research publication specific to the tobacco industry's misappropriation of American Indian culture, traditional tobacco. And in summary, the tobacco industry portrays tobacco as part of Native American culture, as traditional to Native Americans. It uses harmful stereotypes of Native Americans to validate commercially available tobacco, and that this is a misappropriation of Native American culture and the use of traditional tobacco. How do Natives see their own relationship with tobacco? So when I Googled Native Americans smoking a peace pipe, all right, this is the first image that came up. This is not a peace pipe, right?
Peace pipe.
It's probably AI generated. But so I dug into a few more statistics. Back in 2017, 21.9% of Native Americans and Alaska Natives were smoking tobacco, which is the highest smoking rate of all the racial ethnic groups in the US. And a year later, it was up to 32%. I've seen more recent statistics, and it hasn't really changed. There's a larger percentage of Native Americans who smoke tobacco than other ethnic groups. So all of this advertising not only has misrepresented the relationship of Native Americans with tobacco and their use to the public at large, but I would argue it has changed our own perception of our own relationship with tobacco, that smoking is a way of connecting with our own culture, smoking cigarettes most specifically. So I put together some tobacco quick facts. Wild tobacco, this is wild tobacco, right? And wild tobacco is native to the Americas and Australia. I was surprised by that. I think I pulled another statistic in here. Oh yeah, there's 49 species native to the Americas and 22 species native to Australia. But it was after the discovery of the Americas that tobacco was introduced to Europe. So it did not meet the world stage through Australia. It met the world stage through the Americas. And it's true that many, if not most, pre-colonial native tribes used tobacco. Okay. But every source that I can find reasserts that it was used ceremonially, spiritually, and medicinally. So it was not used recreationally. And that it was not inhaled or swallowed. Okay, so even some of the tribal references that talk about chewing tobacco, it was, the juice was extracted through that chewing process, and then that was like spit or expelled into a different form to be used as medicine, as a way of carrying the prayers. So I don't know. Do I need to reiterate? So it's not being used, all right? It's not being smoked and inhaled like cigarettes or even cigars. It's not being chewed and ingested like chewing tobacco, despite the huge commercial influence that Native American traditional tobacco is appropriately used that way. Versus commercial tobacco, big difference in how it looks, right? So it's a hybrid cultivar. Very large leaf, and it has much less nicotine. So this is another piece of information that reasserts the difference in use. Traditional wild tobacco has an extremely high nicotine level. It's actually part of the nightshade family. So, tomatoes and eggplants and bell peppers are nightshade family, but so is deadly nightshade. And so it's got this nicotine in it that would make it extremely difficult to inhale, right? Doesn't make any sense that anyone would be inhaling tobacco that they smoked. And the taste, if you were to be chewing it, I really couldn't find anything that seemed legitimate supporting that anybody was chewing tobacco, pre-colonial Native Americans, but some people sort of talk about it as if it were true. Of course, commercial tobacco is processed, packaged, and packaged to be inhaled or swallowed. So it is being treated in a very different way. Even the, what's the right word? The way that it's processed, traditional tobacco was not processed that way, right? You know how we see these like little brown shredded chunks and oh my gosh, fermented. So it's actually fermented, similar to like tea leaves are fermented to make black tea. So commercially available tobacco leaves actually go through like a fermentation process as part of their development. So just, a very different animal, this wild tobacco versus commercial tobacco. Who invented cigarettes and why? So cigarettes were invented, as far as Encyclopedia Britannica can tell, in the early 16th century. So cigars existed, right? Cigars existed, and I didn't look into the history of cigars, but discarded cigar butts were picked up by these beggars in the street in Spain. And they were then rolled into these like cigarettes. And that is the impetus of cigarette smoking. Now, the Aztecs did smoke tobacco in hollow reeds, or I've seen it smoked in a corn husk, but again, not inhaled, right? So this is a vehicle of getting that smoke into the air so that your prayers can be more easily carried through the air and into the other realms. But if you've I've actually puffed on one of these corn husk quote cigarettes ceremonially and accidentally inhaled just like the tiniest amount. And I thought I was going to hack my lungs out, like as if the tobacco itself wasn't harsh enough. That corn husk is horrific. So they're coming from this tradition. And by the way, as a non-smoker, I looked up how long it takes to smoke a cigarette. The average time is 6 minutes. And there's 20 cigarettes in a pack. Who knew? So, by the way, all kinds of course, we all know, I think it's common knowledge that there's been all kinds of additives to the vast majority of commercially available cigarette tobacco, right? All kinds of little additives in the tobacco, but also in the paper. So they are engineered to fit in your hand a certain way. It's the size of a pencil, right? It fits in your fingers a certain way so that it feels really comfortable. And they've been engineered to burn at a particular rate, which makes them easier to inhale. And then other substances are added to the tobacco itself, right, to increase its effect in our lungs. So I don't know whether cigarettes are still putting asbestos in the tobacco, but I know that used to be an additive, at least when I was a teen. So my foray into cancer sticks started in 2015. I made this first set of beaded cigarettes and put them in the Cherokee art market. I won the Judge's Choice Award. It's sort of the Also Ran Award, like, this is really cool. We don't want to give it one of our normal awards, but it's so cool, we'll give it this Also Ran Award. And so I was surprised that it won any kind of recognition, but I thought, I still think that this is a message that's pertinent, not just to Cherokee, but to all Native people. So I made a bunch of little ashtrays, right? So that they each had their own ashtray. And this display of 8 cancer sticks in their own little ashtrays actually won me a first place ribbon at the Santa Fe Indian Market last summer. And the funny story about that is I had this one Anglo judge find me right at my little booth after the art show. And so that he could tell me that he didn't vote for mine. And I'm like, at first, I feel a little bit like, that was rude, but I'm like, hey, this is an opportunity. I'm like, well, tell me more. Tell me why, what was the discussion? Tell me more. I want to know anything. So come to find out, the 4 other judges in this category, in the sculpture category, were all Native, and he's Anglo. And all the other judges argued for my piece winning that ribbon. So of course, I don't know why, right? I don't know the motivation of the individuals, but I notice when I bring them and when I see Native people, they understand them in a different way, right? So other people, they're like, oh, they're cigarettes, but they're beaded. So in a way, it's reclaiming, it's saying, okay, these are being misappropriated as Native American, but tobacco is Native American. It is spiritual, but when you put it in this format, I call it a death dose. Mm-hmm. You make it this cancer stick, and now it's a corruption. Of course, I showed you my little video of GASP. In this case, I've got a bunch of cigarette butts burnt down, and one of these with this silver wire being the smoke, and then the lungs. I was making these diseased lungs. I actually found photos of diseased lungs, and diseased lungs really do become black and
hardened, flexible.
Yeah, hardened. The blood vessels and arteries turn kind of white, they become oxygen deprived. The tissue is oxygen deprived. But the fun thing was, as I was making it, I came to the end of the trachea and it was just like a tube, and I was like, I want something interesting. I want it to be interesting from all angles. So I put this mouth on it, and I loved it even more. Has anyone seen someone? I actually had a great aunt who died with some sort of smoking related thing. Anyway, she was on oxygen. Mm-hmm. And before they had to give her a tracheotomy, but even after, she would, I've seen this in commercials too, she would smoke cigarettes through her through the hole in her trachea.
Mm.
You know? It is extremely addictive. I feel a lot of compassion for people who've been caught in this snare. So then a follow-up question is, all right, well, look at these companies, right? Red Man Tobacco, American Spirit, they're owned by natives, right? No, they're not. They're not owned by natives. They've never been owned by anyone in their entire power structure, has never been native. They don't give any money back. And yet they are using these stereotypical war bonnet wearing Native American imagery to profit on a corrupted, a corrupted product, a product that kills people, a product that's addictive, a product that is in no way true to the Native American tradition. I found one cigarette manufacturer that is a Native American, a native-owned cigarette manufacturer, which is this Signal. All natural, so granted, they're not putting those extra chemicals in. And they're Mohawk, so they're in Mohawk, New York. And they also do gambling stuff and gas that I've got, like, they started off as like gas station quick stop grocery stores. And I guess it pissed them off, right? They're like, you know what? Okay, fine. You're going to buy cigarettes. We'll make cigarettes. They won't be quite as bad. And you can buy Cherokee tobacco. This Cherokee brand tobacco, believe it or not, even though it's got this Plains Indian looking dude in a headdress, is actually produced by the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians. But notice, it is pipe tobacco. So I respect that, right? Like, good on you, Eastern Band, right? They're actually producing tobacco that is pipe tobacco. So if you want to use tobacco ceremonially, this is a product that is more legitimate than probably anything else out there. I think that's it. That's my whole presentation. I'm willing and happy to take any questions, Wado.